See, Councillor Baldry's ahead of me by about 2 seconds. I hope not. That's that. So that's the other thing I was going to mention. It's St Swithin's Day today, and the sun's shining. So let's hope we get some better weather. Better weather in the future. Okay, right. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We have no apologies for this afternoon's meeting. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Mr. White. Item 1, minutes. There's 2 sets of minutes to approve. That's a true and correct. Sorry. Thank you, Councillor Baldry. Or Birch, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. You're asking us to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th. I'd like to make a point that these minutes are not complete, and they're not complete at and the reference is on. It's E28/21, item item E80/20, and are on page 12, and it concerns the urgent business dealing with the additional restriction grant. When Council addressed this matter, I put forward a proposal. That proposal was seconded, and for some reason, after you consulted the monitoring officer, you did not allow me to put forward the amendment that was seconded. Therefore, I think that position should be stated in the minutes that I did put forward the proposal. It was seconded. And I think it needs to be minuted that you did not allow me to proceed on an advice from the monitoring officer, and I think that should also be stated in the minutes. And therefore, in such circumstances, I suggest that Council defer dealing with the approval of these minutes until the next meeting, until they're corrected. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Birch.
Therefore, if that's the wish of the meeting, Chair, if the meeting allows me to go away and have a look at the draft of those and bring them back to the September Council. So what I think we're asking the meeting to do now is actually in effect defer approval of those minutes, but in effect agree the extraordinary Council meeting minutes on the 17th of June.
Do we need a show of hands for approval?
Yes, please.
Can I have a show of hands for those in favour? Favour of deferring the minutes of the 20th, wasn't it?
That's 12 in favour of the deferral. Thank you, Chair. (14) against deferral. Thank you, Chair.
So I need to take advice on where we go from there.
So the deferral is therefore lost. So if therefore members are happy to propose approval of those minutes and both sets together, we'll take a vote on those. Thank you, Chair.
Approval of, I'd like to vote for whatever I do for approval of the minutes complete.
Seconded.
Therefore, Chair, we'll ask for for 2 separate votes as per the request of the meeting. Therefore, approval of the annual council minutes from the May meeting. Those in favour, please, members. To do that separately.
We'll do it. Keep everybody happy. We'll do it separately, okay? Right. So the approval of the minutes for the meeting of the 20th, wasn't it?
Yes.
Can I have a show of hands of approval?
That's 14 in favour. Thank you, Chair.
Those against?
(12 against. Thank you, Chair.
So those minutes are approved. The minutes of the special meeting on the 17th. Anybody approve those, please? Seconder? Thank you. Oh, show of hands in favour.
That is clearly carried. Thank you, members.
Thank you. In fact, Councillor Baldry, did you want to just say a few words at this minute about the minutes on the FCC situation?
I wasn't planning to, Chairman. I was happy to take questions if people want to. If members want an update, I should do that. If you would like me to do it now, I haven't got the agenda in front of me.
I was led to understand that you were going to actually say a few words, but if you're not worried about it,
I'm happy to
give us just an update.
do so. But the update, of course, will appear again a week today when overview and scrutiny appears, and it takes place.
If you're happy enough to leave it to overview and scrutiny, that's fine.
I can give you the 1 minute version. I'll give you the 10-minute version, and I can give you the half-hour version with questions.
I think the 1 minute would be preferable. We've got quite a lot of business this afternoon, but I'd be interested to hear what you have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner. Got me working now. Just to say that the executive continues to put enormous pressure onto FCC. The situation has got a lot better than it was previously, but we're still not satisfied with the position that the number of collections not made is still too many, and the number of dissatisfied members of the public is too many. Nevertheless, it has got a great deal better. We met with FCC management, and I have to say the number of missed collections which they are reporting is down to 0, but the item which we are much more interested in is the number of complaints we get from the public, because believe it or not, the reported miscollections are not always totally accurate, but the number of customer complaints is also dropping enormously. We are now moving on with FCC to discuss areas beyond those of the just simple waste collection. We are looking at them because there have been problems with bottle and paper bank collections, and we are pressurising them, and they are now promising to put it right. There have been problems with litter and dog bin emptying and toilet cleaning, and also with road sweeping. Given that the area of South Hams is a tourist area, we are already into the tourist season. We will move into the peak of the tourist season very shortly, and I think it is very important, and we as an executive think it is, and we're pressurising FCC to make sure that the place looks much more decent than it does at the moment. I will take questions if you like, Chairman, but that is a summary, but a detailed paper will appear, which members will see ready for next Thursday's overview and scrutiny. And even though not all members of this council are on the overview and scrutiny panel, they will have an opportunity to see the latest position then.
Thank you, Councillor Baldry. I will take questions, but I don't think we need to have a debate. I think Councillor Birch will be dealing with this at ONS, unless there's something really burning. I think if we could move on. Anybody? No? Right, thank you very much. So, item 2, urgent business. I have no urgent business at the present time. Exempt information, I won't have to divide the agenda as far as I'm aware. Item 4, declarations of interest. Members, have you any declarations of interest, please? No? Thank you. Item 5, business brought forward by the chairman. I didn't have any, but there's a little bit of information that the leader, Councillor Pearce, would like to impart to you, which I think is a little bit of good news for once. So, Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairman, and good afternoon, everybody. You will recall that we offered £50,000 to each of our 5 major towns for supporting them to open up again after the COVID restrictions and the lockdowns over the spring, the winter and the spring. The time for putting in those bids has passed, and this morning we were pleased to be able to send letters to the 3 towns who applied to tell them that they'd been largely successful with their bids. 3 bids were received from Totnes, Dartmouth and Kingsbridge. The bids had to be compliant with the rules for the ARG grant, so it's a credit to those towns that put in the effort and thought to be able to do so. Dartmouth and Totnes's bids were largely successful and Kingsbridge's was partially so. Formal letters confirming this were sent out first thing this morning. If anybody's interested in the details later, I have got them for each town. It was disappointing that Ivybridge and Salcombe didn't apply, and so have missed out on this because it was a brilliant offer from us. But that's up to them. So well done to Totnes, Dartmouth, and Kingsbridge. Thank you, Leader.
Thank No. Thank you, Councillor Pearce, for that. So we'll now move on to agenda item 6. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Question. Sorry. Yeah. Councillor Hodgson, you're going to have to sit somewhere where I can see you a little easier. I always feel I try to miss you somehow, but I don't. Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll. First and then Councillor Birch, okay?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say that a message went round this morning to all the town councillors, obviously, because I'm the deputy mayor, and I'm sure the district councillors will say something about this, but just to say how well received that was, and to say thanks. I know there'll be a formal thank you, but everybody was absolutely thrilled. So just to thank those who have been involved in taking those bids forward.
Thank you, Councillor Birch.
Yes, I think, first of all, a big thanks from Totnes. Certainly well appreciated. I think a big a round of applause should go to Totnes Town Council for all the effort it put into making the bid. The council allocated £250,000 for the distribution around the 5 towns. May I ask, what are the plans for the unspent £100,000? Has that been formulated yet?
I could see that coming before he was done.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, just one question. That you said it was a partial grant in Kingsbridge. Could they apply again for the rest of the money?
No, because I think one of their applications was found not to be totally compliant. That was the one for the ice rink in the winter. And some money has been found for the cinema, but I gather not all of it, because I don't think all parts of that application complied either. But we've done whatever we can. Well, officers have done whatever they can, whenever they could, to make sure that as much money went to the towns as was possible.
Okay, anybody else? Oh, Councillor O'Callaghan.
Thanks. Yeah, just similar lines. It's great to have got most of the money, well, part of it, in Kingsbridge. I seem to recall from my brief perusal of the email this morning before I left that it was the ice rink application that didn't cut the mustard. I just wondered why that would be.
That's what I've just said, Councillor Callaghan. I'm afraid, because it only went out this morning, I don't have the details.
Yeah.
But if you would like to see Mr. Brooke or send him an email, I'm sure he'll tell you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hopwood.
Thank you, Chairman. I think you said it was Ivybridge and Salcombe town councils that weren't successful. I think that's a real that didn't bid. They didn't apply. I think that's a real shame that they didn't apply, because we are often told as a council by residents that we don't do enough for them. And here is a prime opportunity for town councils to apply for £55,000 each, which is no small amount of money, and 2 large towns, Ivybridge, that I know has been moaning that it wants a town square and and it could have made that maybe comply, could have used the money towards that, and Salcombe, I'm amazed never applied. Well, I'm amazed both didn't apply, but it's a real shame, but it also is a credit to those 3 towns that did apply. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, Councillor McKay.
Is it possible for districts, wards to apply for these monies as well, or is it just for the town councils?
This particular offer was open to towns.
Okay.
Now, I believe there was an amount of money that was opened for the villages to bid for. Perhaps our Chief Executive would like to give you the details of that.
So thanks very much, Leader. Yes, this particular money was allocated in the way set out by Council. It was 5 lots of up to 50, so 250. There was a further 100,000. We focused our efforts so far on making sure that we got this money organised first, and I'd like to pay tribute to Mr. Brooke and Lisa Buckle. They've worked incredibly hard, actually, with the towns that have applied to ensure that their bids have been acceptable within the terms of the ARG national funding, which is incredibly complicated. At this stage, we haven't moved ahead with the other 100,000 in terms of designing that scheme, but we will do now we've dealt with this. So we'll be coming back to that in due course.
Thank you for that. Okay, no more questions? Right, now we will move on to item 6, corporate strategy development. I'll call upon our leader, Councillor Pearce, to introduce this, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm largely going to say what I said at the Executive, so if you were there, forgive me. It's important to have a corporate strategy that reflects the aims and ambitions of the Council and sets out clearly what the Council intends to do to enhance the lives of residents as far as it's able to do so. What is evident is the pandemic has changed the scene irrevocably, and that therefore we need to set new ambitions. So here is our new corporate strategy called Better Lives for All, and from now on, I hope that it'll be called that. Most of it will be familiar to you because most of it comes from the long discussions had by all members to draw up the recovery programme, along with working groups and all member deliberations on the Climate Change and Biodiversity Action Programme. You've all also been actively involved in the housing strategy, whose action plan will follow in the early autumn. Better Lives for All is very much designed as an outward-facing document and for our residents to reference. Its aim is to show the main thrust of the Council's ambitions for the district over the next 3 years, and that is the remainder of this Council and the first year of the next, allowing the new Council to have time to set its own ambitions. The actions listed are obviously only a few of the things we shall be doing, but they are all measurable, and we should be able to report progress and show when they have been completed. The aim now is to go out to public consultation, pending Council's approval this afternoon, to see if residents think we have got our main aims right. In other words, this is not set in stone and can be changed. We're well aware that, as ever, for some, there will not be enough detail, or that we're not going far enough or not fast enough, and for others we may be going too far, too fast. We hope we've pitched it about right. Following consultation, we shall come back to Council with a revised version to take the consultation into account, and this will be adopted as the new corporate strategy called Better Lives for All. Happy to take questions, Chairman.
Questions? Anybody? No?
Could I make a comment? Or are you just dealing with questions?
Yeah, Councillor Baston?
Are you just dealing with questions at the moment? Or?
Well, there doesn't seem to be any questions, so we'll...
Okay, so can I propose the recommendations and then we can go into comments?
Okay, I'll second it in that case, then, Chairman.
Thank you. I propose the recommendations on page 27 to commence a formal public consultation and to ask the Chief Executive and Director of Governance and Assurance to develop delivery plans for the strategy for consideration by the Executive alongside the final strategy at its meeting on the 16th of September 2021, before the onward consideration by full Council on the 23rd of September 2021.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Baston, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just wanted to say it's a culmination, really, of the work that members have done over the winter period. along with the executive and officers to put this together. And I think at the end of the day, we've come up with a really nice little document with some nice targets and also some ways in which we can quantify whether we've achieved what we set out to achieve. There is still opportunity for members and of course for the members of the public to have their say on this when it goes out to consultation. But I just would like to thank all members for their input over the winter months.
Thank you. Councillor Hawkins?
I would just like to follow on what Councillor Bastone has said. I think all members have worked very hard over the last 12 months with the consultation period that we've been having in our own council concerning after the pandemic, or hopefully after the pandemic. We've learned some really good lessons working with our communities over the last 12 months. And in my view, this really does empower communities to have a part in the future of the South Hams District Council. And I hope very much that the communities will look into this carefully, and members, so that we can all work together to empower our residents.
Thank you. Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Chairman. I think we need to appreciate that these documents aren't often particularly easy to put together, and as the leader says, to get the balance right in terms of the pacing of it and what people want can be quite a difficult exercise for both councillors, the executive and officers. So I very much commend this. It looks like a good document to me that sets out the council's corporate desires and the wishes of the communities, and hopefully those people across the district can take part in the consultation. But I'm very happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas?
Councillor Foss, I found myself echoing Councillor Brown, in fact, with particular emphasis on officers. The presentation is extremely user-friendly and professional, and I think they need praising for the work they've put in. It's the actual document that will meet the public is very impressive, and as I say, very user-friendly. It's excellent. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Anybody else? Any debate on it? Any more comments? No? So, Leader, do you want to say any more?
No, I'd echo what Councillor Thomas has said. I do think the graphics department in particular has done a really, really good job on this. And officers have worked hard to put it all into presentable form. So thank you to everybody, and I'm happy to move to the vote if everybody else is.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder for that?
Second.
All right. Okay. Can I have a show of hands of all those in favour, please?
That's unanimous. Thank you, Chair.
I'm glad you're not the only one struggling with the perspex. Thank you, members, for that. That's great that was unanimous. Right. We'll move on to item 7 then, Council Constitution. Leader, would you like to introduce this, please?
Yep. Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I have a list of amendments, very small. They're mostly kind of typo-type amendments that I've been circulated with. Now, I think they're up on the screen. Yep, it's behind me, so I'm having trouble seeing them. But yes, they are. You're aware, members, that this item was withdrawn from the last council agenda, really due to the amount of information involved and the late publication of the paper. You're also aware of the previous reports to council on decision-making in February and March this year, and of the detailed consultation undertaken by the head of paid service with the various political groups of the council. I first requested a review of the consultation to make it more constitution to make it more user-friendly in the digital age and more relevant to good decision-making when I became chairman of the audit committee in 2017. I'm therefore grateful to the efforts of Andy Bates and David Fairbairn, the new monitoring officer, for at last taking this seriously and presenting the first parts of the new council constitution, which will have to run alongside the remaining old parts, as explained in the agenda paper, until such time as these can be discussed, consulted on, and drafted up for approval at future council meetings, as set out in recommendations 1 and 2, with the detail in section 2 of the report. This is a very good start and goes to the heart of the council's decision-making, greatly reducing the risks set out in paragraph 4.2 of the report. If adopted today, the Constitution as set out in recommendation 1 becomes effective immediately and will be applicable to the remainder of this meeting. Owing to the extensive consultation undertaken with all members, I'm hopeful that members will be able to support the text as presented and the appendices, but I'm happy to take any questions before moving the recommendations.
Any questions? Councillor Birch and then Councillor Panel.
Yeah, it's just my question is that we received a further document which proposed some additions or amendments to the papers that were sent out a week ago. I think the recommendation needs to be adjusted to incorporate these amendments because they're not mentioned on the recommendation before us. I think it's just that's a technical matter. In other words, if we are going to be asked to proceed to the vote, that the recommendation includes the amended wording that was sent out just I think it was a couple of days ago. I think that's for completeness.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Birch. I think that's a reasonable request. If we were to say something like, and I'll get Mr. Fairburn to advise me, adopts with immediate effect a revised constitution with the updates circulated during the week, including the updates circulated during the week to comprise.
Leader, that would be fine.
All right. With you, Councillor Birch.
Yes. Is that the wording on the bottom?
It'll soon be the top.
Oh, right. It's being moved to the top. Yes, that's. Thank you.
Right. Right for doing that, Councillor Panel, is it anything different or?
Yes, while complimenting the officers on the layout of this document, which I think we'll all find very useful, and some of us will keep it with us like a Bible, I do find it difficult to wade through this electronically. On request, would it be possible for members to be issued with a printed copy, Leader?
I'm getting the nod from the Chief Executive, so sorry, Councillor Hopwood.
Chairman, we have a member's allowance every year to for things like printing, etc. So I would suggest if members want a printed version, they print it themselves. That's what our allowance is for.
We no longer have that allowance, Chairman.
Chairman, it was incorporated into the allowance, and that allowance is to form part of printing costs, etc. I don't think the council should be, with regards to climate change, etc., printing on the request of individual councillors. I want a printed copy, but I'll print it at home myself. I'm certainly not wanting the council to spend it to print.
Well, printing it at home or printing it centrally isn't going to make any difference to the carbon emissions or the use of paper. And it's much cheaper, I would have thought, and more efficient for the council to print it in bulk rather than us to use our domestic printers, which will cost us a fortune compared with the central cost of printing it on a large machine, which is much more cost effective.
Councillor Mackay.
Thank you. Can I ask a question which is relevant as opposed to something that isn't? The 8.3, we had a discussion when Andy came to talk to us at our group meeting. To be honest, I can't remember what you said. I have a concern over this 45 minutes being allowed for notices of motion, because there is obviously a risk of filibustering, and clearly the person who's got the motion in first is going to get a look in, and the person who is last is probably going to get carried forward. So I just need to understand how that is going to be managed such that it's equitable, because it's clearly not included. There's nothing in here about the procedure of how this will be handled in the Constitution. So I think it needs to be recorded at this meeting what is going to be done about that, how that's going to be managed. Thank you.
I will ask senior management. Councillor Pearce?
I'm not yet senior management.
Well, you are to me.
Right. Thank you for the question. Now, I believe this is one of the updates that came out midweek. There was a paragraph added after 8.3b to say, in either case, the chairman may increase the period for the asking of questions or debating notices of motion if, in the chairman's opinion, the importance of the issue raised merits it, and to do so would not have an adverse impact on the efficient running of the meeting. And it has always been the case that the first people, because it's always a promoter and a seconder, to put in a motion, gets it in first, and if you're late, it comes at the end of the list. And if it doesn't get heard, it gets carried over to the next meeting. So those rules haven't changed at all. But there is provision, but it's entirely at the discretion of the chairman, and I would suggest that if we're asking questions like this, the time at the end is likely to be shorter.
Right. We had a proposal from Councillor Hopwood about the printing. I've got to deal with that. Is there a seconder?
Chairman, I asked to speak as well in reply to to Councillor McKay's pompous remarks about relevance. Everything I say is relevant to me, else I wouldn't say it, because if I think it's relevant, I'm going to say it, whether someone else thinks it's relevant or not. One person's relevance may be another person's ignorance.
Seconded. Mr. White, we're going to have a vote on whether we print, the council print it, or the individuals print it. All those in favour that we take it out of our own allowances to print off the council constitution, please show.
We're voting for whether the members' basic allowance in effect includes the printing.
Yep.
Correct. Pardon? That's 10 in favour. Thank you, members.
Those against?
Nine against. Thank you, members.
Can we show abstentions as well, please, Mr. White?
And abstentions. Thank you. 7 abstentions. Thank you, Chair.
So that was carried.
Indeed. Thank you.
Right. Right, now we've had that little side. Questions on the Constitution, please. Anybody got any? It would appear not. No. Debate is going to be introduced by the leader.
Well, Chairman, I'll move the recommendations at 1 and 2 with the suggested amendment, which is now up on the screen, before we move into the debate.
Seconded, Chairman.
Thank you. Anybody wish to debate this? I would have thought. Okay, that's fine. So we need to go straight to the vote. Mr. White?
Thank you, Chair. All in favour, please, members? That's 27 in favour. Thank you, Chair.
Those against?
None against?
Abstentions?
One abstention. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to have to remind you now that the new rules apply from now. They would have been already if do we all know? I will try, Councillor Birch. Particularly as I know your wicked sense of humour might leave. Yes, okay, we'll leave it there. Right. Item agenda 8. Proposed modifications to the Salcombe Neighbourhood Plan. There was one or two issues that have come up. Our leader, Councillor Pearce, will enlighten us, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd actually like to start by proposing an alternative recommendation, and when I introduce the paper, the reason why will become clear. So the new recommendation is that Council determine the Salcombe Neighbourhood Plan Policy SALC H3 Principal Residency be modified to require a Section 106 agreement. Now the reason for this is we accept that a planning condition may usually be sufficient to secure principal residency, but this does not allow for the exceptional circumstances encountered in Salcombe and the surrounding area, where there's a very high percentage of second homes and many houses changing hands frequently between people who are prepared to pay and do almost anything to acquire them. Whilst it's easy enough at present to keep track of houses with conditions on them, over time this immediate knowledge will gradually be lost and will become very easy for a condition to get overlooked when a house is sold. The advantage of a Section 106 agreement is that it is registered against the property title and so is immediately visible to any purchaser. A condition is not. As precedent, I would point out to members that the Thurleston Neighbourhood Plan already only allows a Section 106 agreement for any new properties attracting a principal residency requirement, so the Salcombe Neighbourhood Plan is not breaking new ground in this respect. Officers keep quoting the case of the appeal at Brewery Quay and Island Street, where the inspector imposed a principal residence condition rather than a Section 106. To be frank, we were exceptionally grateful that he imposed anything at all, because at that stage the neighbourhood plan had not been made. In fact, he was under no duty to impose anything, and this was probably the single good thing to come out of this appeal decision. Councillor Long and I, however, firmly believe that a Section 106 in a housing market environment like Salcombe is the right course to take, and we commend this modification to Council and seek your support to agree it.
Chairman, if I may second.
You may. Any questions? Councillor Birch.
Yeah, I'm very supportive of this, but I think there is one problem. And the one problem is this, is that the government in its planning bill, as I understand it, and I stand to be correct if I'm wrong, is intending to abolish Section 106 agreements. If that is the case, then clearly this proposal, if passed, will have a very short life. So perhaps I could ask, will the leader of this council use her influence to persuade the government not to abolish Section 106 agreements?
Councillor Birch, I don't like telling a lawyer how to suck eggs, but it's my understanding that legislation is rarely retrospective. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that the planning bill has not seen the light of day yet, so you and I and everybody else doesn't know what's in it.
Can I just come back on that? The fact is that I'm thinking about future Section 106 agreements. In other words, any new development in the future will not be able to have the benefit of 106 agreements if the planning bill contains the deletion of the 106 provisions. Now, my authority for saying that there is going to be abolition of the Section 106 agreement is a result of an article in the Times today, so I presumably they have their ear to the ground. So I'm not talking about retrospective, I'm talking about future developments which will not have the benefit of having a 106 agreement if the bill abolishes them.
All right, I take that, but I think that's a bridge we will cross when we get to it. The problem is that meanwhile, we have a lot of properties coming forward that need to have a Section 106 imposed on them, and what we need is some way of showing that this is registered against the title, which a condition isn't, and that's the problem. If Section 106 is abolished, but there is some way of registering the equivalent against the title, then we'll be happy to go with the equivalent. But until such time, I think this is a good course of action to take in Salcombe, and probably a good course of action to take in similar neighbourhood plans along that part of the coast, because we're all suffering from the same problem. You don't live in the Wild West, which is Salcombe to the Avon Estuary.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay. Can we have the recommendation proposed as it is, please?
Already done so, Chair.
And seconded, was it seconded just now? Yes, it was.
Seconded, sir.
Right, debate it? Anybody wants to debate these? No, nothing. Sorry.
Chairman, I don't intend to do more than Councillor Pearce has said, but this is critically important for areas like Salcombe and, as she said, for most other parishes and towns in the area. And I think it is vitally important that we make sure that the principal residency is clear when properties are moved. And I think this, I would commend this to all members of this council to ensure that we can support our local communities and allow principal residents to apply right across the area. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Pearce.
Yeah, I've just had another thought on what Councillor Birch has said to me. And I think he is right in that Section 106s are going to be abolished for affordable housing, because the proposal is to include them in the infrastructure levy. But that will not preclude a Section 106 being drawn up for something of this nature, I think. That would be my take on what's been circulating about the planning bill.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas, did you... No, I was simply pointing out the pastor.
Thank you, Chairman. I attended Kingsbridge Town Council meeting earlier this week, and I have attended their meetings in the past, and they really struggle with trying to find affordable housing for youngsters now in Kingsbridge, and they're in the midst of their neighbourhood plan. So could I recommend to our Kingsbridge councillors perhaps take this idea back to Kingsbridge Council? They may be able to put something in their neighbourhood plan, because they've not got to that final stage yet, I don't think, have they?
No, the comments end on 19th, Hilary. We're on it, don't worry. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
your concern.
I think Mr Fairbairn wants to say something. Is that correct?
I wasn't going to, Chairman, but I know you've given me the opportunity. I will say that broadly the comments as I understand them on the planning bill are broadly correct. There's certainly a proposal to revise Section 106 and the community infrastructure levy, and I can't work out at the moment whether the Section 106 provisions are only in respect of contributions or not. It's far more wide-ranging than that. But as we know, the devil will be in the detail. We don't have the detail till the bill is published, and I think we're a long way off knowing the detail, so we won't know for some time.
Thank you. Councillor Holloway.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wonder if it's too much to ask for a planning condition and the 106 agreement. Well, it said or.
It has or, and because it has or, the planning officers refused to do a Section 106, which is why we're having to withdraw the condition. So it says either or at the moment.
So it could be a planning condition. Oh, all right, sorry, reinforced. Okay, Thank you.
You clear about that? Right, I think we can put the, to the vote, please. All those in favour?
That's unanimous. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, members. Sorry. Agenda item 9, questions on notice. We have 2 questions received in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 8. Question 1. In question 1, response to be given by Councillor Pearce. I got missing the bit here. Where are all the questions on them? Something from Councillor Mackay. With us for a minute. Councillor Pearce, if you'd like, I'll leave you to do that, and we move on to question 2 for a minute, which response will be given by Councillor Baldry. Can you do that for a second, please? Give Councillor Pearce a chance to be able to respond.
Anything to help the leader, Chairman.
Thank you. Me, as it turns out.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson, for your question. I will say at the end of this that it was very useful to have our attention drawn to what is a problem on the website.
Councillor Baldry seems to be on mute, Chairman.
Shall I start again? Right. I thanked Councillor Hodgson for her question because I think it was useful to draw our attention to the anomaly on the website, and we have taken steps to change that now. Of course, FCC's performance, as I said earlier, is improving but needs to improve further. But we still would like to say that all miscollections need to be reported within the timescale advertised on our website, because these go direct to FCC, which ensures they should be able to take action on the reported miscollection, and that is agreed under the contract. However, as I have said, I recognise Councillor Hodgson's concerns, and I have asked the team that this information is added on the website, on our website, which allows customers to report where customers report miscollections, and we are therefore going to say to customers that they need to go onto the website and look at the section which says "Asks our team a question," and that will allow people to report items which they cannot report directly because the time has expired. But thank you, Councillor Hodgson.
Councillor Hodgson, would you like to ask a supplementary?
No, just to say thank you. Thank you, Councillor Baldry.
Thank you. Right, on it. Councillor Pearce, are you in a position to answer Councillor Mackay's question?
Thank you, Chairman. I am now, and I apologise for not being able to find it earlier. The impact of the development was considered. This is about the development in Dartmouth of 400 plus houses, everybody. The impact of the development was considered through the examination process, and ultimately it came down to the professional opinion of DCC Highways as to the acceptability of impact on both the site and the wider highway network. The impacts on villages on the A road network of this site is negligible compared to the pre-existing volumes of traffic, and especially when compared to the impact from tourism, and the socio-economic impacts of not proactively allocating sites for new housing would be much more acute and long-lasting than the minimal impact of traffic movements generated by new residents.
Thank you. Councillor McKay, do you want to ask a supplementary?
Well, my supplementary in response to that is on what evidence do you base that response? Because I know for a fact that the village of Harberton Ford particularly is the amount of traffic going through it now has increased beyond recognition over the last 18 months. And the only cause that I can conjure are these developments. It's not, I mean, obviously there is a seasonal variation, but residents are constantly asking me what is being done about the traffic increase along the A381. And there is a huge increase. Now, it doesn't come from nowhere. There must be a cause. And I find your answer doesn't really address the issue. I mean, there is a problem, and I would like it to be identified as such, and ask you basically what can be done about it, which was the basically what I'm asking in the question that's on the screen here.
Member questions aren't limited to 50 words, are they? Councillor McKay, these houses aren't built yet. There's a show house and a couple of other ones up there, but the Dartmouth members will correct me, but there certainly aren't very many houses there at all yet, and I'm not even sure that any of them are occupied yet. So the cars are not coming from that
There's
development.
a lot of development traffic.
What about the development traffic? Well, the development traffic may be going to that site. It may be going to lots of other sites in Dartmouth where development's happening. And Kingsbridge, the development's going on in Kingsbridge, but anybody in Dartmouth who's got any sense will go down the hill and not over to your way, because they get on the ferry and then from Churston to Scotland, they've got dual carriageway all the way. So I think this is perceived rather than actual. And when you do traffic measurements, this is usually the case. And if you think traffic is bad in the South Hams, go and live in the outer London suburbs or something like that, and then you find out what bad traffic's like.
I used to live in London, of course I know that.
Thank you for that. I think we'll leave it there. I think we've all, to say the least, the amount of traffic wherever I travel at the moment is phenomenal. It's not just in one place or the other, and it's not all holiday makers. So that's the way it is at the present time. Right, we'll move on to notice of motion. 3 motions received. Now, if you remember me saying just now we're working on the new rules, you might just see that Mr. White has got a nice new, brand new bit of kit sat in front of him that will actually time you. So anybody over 3 minutes will be told. So it's there to use. Right, thank you. Right, motion 1. Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Hodgson, would you simply like to move the motion as outlined on the screens?
So moved, Chairman.
Councillor Brazil, would you like to second that?
Yeah, happy to second that, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Hodgson, would you like to introduce your motion now, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think we're all familiar with this because it came to our last meeting, and at that meeting, quite, almost reasonably, I suppose you could say, many members were concerned that it was actually between parliamentary sessions. Well, it has now come back into parliamentary session, and as you can see, I put a date on there that it's actually going to be considered for the second time on the 10th of September. So it's actually a live motion, and it's a live item now at government. And on that basis, I now ask you again to consider supporting this. This support is really important, and as has been set out in the information that I've provided with this, it isn't the same as the Environment Bill, and a lot of people are thinking that it is. But in fact, this gives targets, but most importantly, it really aligns us with what else is happening. And of course, as you're aware, back in April, Devon County Council said they would support this. So if we're going to work collectively across the county, which is probably the most effective way of working, and also thereby across to the government, then it's a really good way of actually aligning ourselves so we're all working on the same targets and with the same sort of like timescales together. And I therefore ask you to consider this most carefully, and also I hope that you will support it today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brazil, do you wish to speak now or hold on till later?
I'll hold on if
Thank you.
at all, yeah.
Who have we got? Oh, sorry, Councillor Rose, you sat back. Not quite like little Jack Horner in the corner, but near enough. Please.
Thank you. I just wanted to say a few words about this as well. As you are aware, I seconded this motion last time. I'm happy that we have a bit of a cross-party situation here. I guess I just wish to thank the members in the last meeting when this was brought forward for the really positive reception it had. And obviously we decided to take it down because of the situation of it being between parliamentary sessions was causing some discrepancy about how legal or effective it would be to vote on it. But I felt like there was actually a really positive, some very, very positive comments made last time about really wishing to support this, and at that time it not being possible. So now that it is possible, I'm really hoping that those same sentiments will apply and that we can follow the lead of Devon County Council and support what is very clearly a very positive step forward, in line very much so with our climate and biodiversity plan, and very much in line with a large movement of authorities and businesses and residents and scientists and people from all walks of life who are really wanting the government to step up and do its bit. And that's what this is for us. This isn't going to change anything for us. It's simply us stating that we want the government to hold to its word. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Rose. Anybody else wish to enter the debate? No? Oh, sorry. Councillor Pearce.
Well, I was waiting, Chairman, to see if anybody else did, but I'll throw my hat into the ring. Now, this bill is not yet on the statute book. It won't be known until early September when it's expected the bill will be published in full, and that it will go through the formality of its second reading. But at the moment, the support in Parliament is not strong for it, and out of nearly 12,000 local councils, only 58 councils have passed a motion in support of it. And yesterday, the council in Cornwall actually voted to reject it, and they had the same motion but didn't accept it. Now, we do still support the aims of this, and we do accept that Devon is largely doing already what this bill is going to promote. It is at the moment holding its citizens' assembly, which will shape what Devon is going to do. And on that basis, we don't unilaterally withdraw support. But we do think that voting for bills like this, that apparently Parliament itself is not supporting in any great number, is a pretty meaningless exercise. But on the basis that Devon is largely doing a lot of climate change work and a lot of good work, and we want to support that, we will not unilaterally withdraw our support from this motion. But it is up to each member to vote as each member feels they want to vote on it.
Okay. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I think at the last meeting of the council, it was established that a lot of people are not against this, and I shan't be voting against it. My view of citizens' assemblies, I think that regionally it's a reasonable idea. I think regionally it's a good idea, but nationally, in my personal view, we have a National Citizens' Assembly, and it's called the House of Commons, and it's elected once every 4 years, or far more regularly recently, actually. So I will not be voting against this by any means, and I do support a lot of the sentiment behind it, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anybody? Councillor Holloway.
Thanks, Chairman. I fully support the spirit of the bill. but MPs have recently asked that government refer more decisions to Parliament rather than taking them without reference. And it bothers me that if government are going to be advised by an unelected cross-section of the population, that it's likely to usurp the MPs even more. And I'd rather the decisions were made by elected MPs. I mean, the Assembly could well be yet another talking shop and impede progress rather than speeding it up. However, I'm sure there'll be some amendments before the final vote, so I won't get too excited about it. Thank you.
Councillor Holroyd, Councillor Brazil will remind you that you did reserve your right to speak.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I would like to speak just quickly. First of all, to say that I very much hope that councillors will support this motion. You know, I don't think it's too much to ask. Just on the Citizens' Assembly and the idea that Westminster is a Citizens' Assembly, I mean, I could get into arguments about the voting system, the fact that 40% of the people end up with 100% of the power, which I don't think is healthy in a democracy, and partly one of the root cause of many of the problems that we face in this country. But secondly, on the Citizens' Assembly, is what it does allow is it allows decisions that might be politically unacceptable to be made by a group that then can help to inform the decision made by parliamentarians. And I just throw in the example of the whole issue of child's birth and abortion and the pill and things like that in Southern Ireland, and gay marriage, that politically unpalatable but sorted out by a Citizens' Assembly. So I think there are advantages to it, and this may be one of the cases where it would be useful and be helpful to as a country to help us progress. So I hope members will support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brazil. There is no one else wishing to speak. There's been no amendments proposed or anything, so we... Councillor Hodgson,
I think it just comes back to me quickly, doesn't it, at the end? Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, just to say thank you, everybody, for your comments. And just as Julian has just said about the Citizens' Assembly, it's really a sounding board. I don't think it can be seen as anything more than just a way of just trying out ideas and just getting a bit of tuning before it then goes back into a more formal bill at any stage. And that's my understanding from what's happening in Devon. So I don't think it's anything to feel that it's undermining democracy. It's actually supporting it. But I hope you will all vote in favour of this important bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. So, Mr. White, we go to the vote, yes?
Thank you, Chair.
All those in favour of the motion before you?
It's 24 in favour, thank you, Chair.
Those against?
3 against, thank you, Chair.
Abstentions?
And 3 abstentions, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. White. So that motion is carried. We'll move on to motion 2, which is, again, I ask Councillor Hodgson simply to put it for a minute, please.
So move.
Councillor Brazil?
And I'll second that.
Thank you. So Hodgson, would you like to introduce your motion, please?
Thank you. Yeah, this is, some members might remember that there was a motion that came before us in December, which was really looking about how we are bringing in the emergency declarations, how we are incorporating them into policy. And subsequent to that, we had the JLP review. And I was really quite concerned that all the work that often goes on at planning committee in terms of looking at ecology reports doesn't really sort of filter down into being monitored. And, you know, if you think about when we're perhaps in certain areas doing quite big planning applications, often fairly close to each other, we, you know, frequently wildlife and biodiversity are being mitigated into places that then become the place that is then being mitigated against, and so on, to the extent that we actually, the loss of net wildlife habitat becomes really quite serious for some of our wildlife. And we have recognised that through our declaration of a biodiversity emergency, and I just think this is a way that we could actually start to look at how we bring in some changes into our policies so that we're much more mindful of it. So monitoring the wildlife is really important, thinking about how we can do our planning slightly differently so that we can, just more effectively be aware of those impacts when we're making decisions which are looking at ecology reports and where their mitigation is meant to take place. Certainly looking at the cumulative impacts on wildlife, because this is when we actually lose net habitats and lose net lots of wildlife, it's actually through, a cumulative impact, often not just a kind of a single impact, when, they actually just die out, and, it's getting very urgent now. And looking at really at some of the policies, the things that we are doing. And so that's in there, like looking at our habitat screening, which I'm aware, I know a number of members of the public are quite concerned about sometimes how that is done and what's being done. And looking then, I've just popped in there, littering. Littering is a very big impact on wildlife, both on land and often at sea. The big gyres that you would look at in the Pacific are often things like Marks and Spencer's plastic wrappers that end up in the Pacific Ocean. And that's obviously not come from the marine environment, but very dangerous to the marine environment. And also thinking about whether or not we could start doing some, implement some bylaws for fines to give our enforcement officers a little bit more power to their elbow, rather than having to go through a very long-winded process of court cases when a developer, for example, makes a breach in a Devon bank, which can be quite serious, but nothing gets done about it for months, by which time the damage is done to the habitat, and it's a lot of work perhaps to impose a fine. So it's really just, ideally, just looking at some ways that we can actually realise the impacts positive impacts we could have to support our biodiversity. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you wish to speak now or later, Councillor Brazil?
I'll speak later if required.
Thank you. Right, we'll open it for debate. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to both Councillors Hodgson and Brazil for bringing this forward to the Council. I think there's a lot of elements of this motion for which we have a great deal of sympathy and understanding for, but unfortunately it's quite badly worded, and it's a bit of there's a bit of gobbledygook there as well, and it's a bit hodgepodge, to be honest. So whilst we have a great deal of sympathy for this, what I would like to ask Councillors Hodgson and Brazil to consider is that if they should be willing to perhaps withdraw this motion and go away and work on it again with both officers and perhaps the council solicitor to come up with something which is more acceptable and also covers the competencies of this council, then I suspect should they choose to bring this back at the next council meeting, then I'm sure we'd be very happy to support it. But I'm basically asking if they'd be willing to withdraw it at this point.
Councillor Hodgson, do you hear what Councillor Brown has said?
To be frank, I kind of take exception to some of the comments that have just been made, because I think that's, hodgepodge. Biodiversity is a hodgepodge, actually, and that's why it is affected in lots of different ways. And so this is really trying to think of a multiple of ways that could actually collectively make a difference, and a positive difference, to how we support our biodiversity. So yeah, it is if you want to use the word hodgepodge, I would say shopping list or even maybe wish list. But I think it does give us actual, clear actions that could be looked at through the work that we do. So none of this is for somebody else to do. This is about South Ham's work and the work that our officers do. And I think it's something that we need to start doing sooner rather than later. And I particularly want to take it away and bring it back in September with Councillor Brown's grammatical corrections. I mean, sure, if you want to make a few amendments to it now, if there's some words that you don't like or some sentences that you don't agree with, or, in their form, but I think it's actually quite clear with the message that's in there, and I would ask everybody to support it today, because we do have an emergency on our hands.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. I'll just make a comment as a chairman. I understand where Councillor Brown is coming from, and perhaps he hasn't put some words quite like he would have liked to have done, but I understand where he's coming from. And there is a lot of support for your thing, but it just needs some tidying up. And personally, as chairman sat here this afternoon, rather than elongating this meeting into hours, which it probably will take, it would be better to do it behind the scenes with everybody's agreement, come here and go through quite quickly in the next meeting. But if you're not prepared to do that, I will call upon Councillor Austin next, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to speak in favour of what Councillor Brown just was saying. I think whilst the sentiment of an awful lot of the motion is very correct, and I think having just voted in favour of the previous motion myself, I can see why I would support this going forward if it was slightly different. But if you look at, for example, bullet point number 4, the essence of the test is that the council can only request supporting information that is relevant, necessary and proportionate. We can't really vote in favour and support certain points in these bullet points. You look at the last bullet point, for example, where you're saying consider options for on-the-spot fines against developers who damage or harm significant wildlife habitats. Well, it's outside of the powers of the council to do that. It would require legislative change to facilitate it, and we've got no powers to do it even if we agreed it. So I can't vote in favour of this particular motion. I think there is content in it, which I certainly sympathise with, and I think there's content in it that we could find agreement on and pass an alternative motion. But at this stage, I'd be forced to vote against it.
Councillor Osborne, Councillor Baldry and then Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, I'm grateful to Councillor Austin, actually, because he has given some precise examples. I've found that Councillor Brown's wishy-washy comments without giving any specific examples were not at all helpful. Councillor Austin has dealt with it. But the normal way in this council, Chairman, would be to the people who didn't like it to move an amendment, not ask for it to be withdrawn. And can I also say, Chairman, this agenda was published a week ago. What a great pity that the opportunity was not taken by Councillor Brown to speak to the movers of the motion and make his suggestions during the week between then and now.
Thank you, Councillor Baldry. Councillor Birch.
Councillor Baldry's taken the words out of my mouth.
Councillor Reeve.
Yeah, I completely understand what everybody's saying, and I know we're all a bit passionate on this subject, aren't we? I mean, we all want things to be right, but I think if you look on point 2, I think it's sort of saying, haven't we already got statutory bodies that are monitoring these sites? We've got like Natural England, the SSI. This is already being done. So why would we want to double do it up? Why would we need to action this again? We are all passionate about our landscape and what happens to it. But I honestly think the council have got this in mind. I think they are working with parties, and I think we are doing the best that we can at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Smurden.
It's working. The problem is there appears to be no consideration as to what the implication is on our planning resources. There's a whole stack of additional work all the way through this. Our planners are fairly stretched as it is. I think it needs far closer consideration to work out what the resource implications of all this work is. There's mention of develop a policy that would seek implementation of urgent remedial actions that may be advised by recognised experts. Somewhere or other we've got to find those. I don't know. I suspect that there, as Councillor Reeve says, a considerable amount of the regulation that's required for this already exists. It probably, it may need strengthening to a degree, but as I say, there's a colossal amount of work for officers in here, so I don't think I can support it.
Thank you. Councillor Brazil.
Thank you, Chairman. If I just say briefly, I think part of this motion is that it is slightly open-ended, and I see it more as particularly in respect of the joint local partnership plan, that it sends a message and flags up the issues that I think are not robust enough within that plan, and particularly within respect of biodiversity. And so I hope that, again, I hope the members don't see this as as an incredibly, the end of the matter, but rather the beginning of the matter, and that we can use this motion indeed to build on the review of the joint local plan that we will be coming up with in the next few years. So I don't think one should be frightened of it or feel that it's going to put an unfair burden on planning officers. But I think that what it does do is it flags up, and I appreciate, as members have already said, that we're all very concerned about these issues, and I think this is a good start. And again, I hope you all will support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brazil. Councillor Baston?
Thank you, Chairman. My colleagues this side have made most of the points that I would have made, and I have to agree with them. It does need some reconsideration. I don't think I can vote for it today. If it was taken away and reconsidered and tightened up, I'm sure I would probably vote for it in the end.
Councillor Long?
Thank you, Chairman. I welcome this as a positive move. There are many cumulative impacts. Monitoring needs to be effective, and I think it addresses concerns, as everybody has said, that many have. And this is a very much I think, as Councillor Brazil has said, very much will be a sort of work in progress. Things will develop out of this, but it lays some clear markers in the sand, which I think are very, very important. And obviously officers, councillors will have to work up some of these as policy, some fixes, some sort of work in practice as things go forward. But at least this motion allows further work to be done and considered. And I think what it does, it lays out some important and positive areas for review and actions to be taken by this council. So I welcome this. I understand some of the comments that have been said by councillors who have concerns about this and say that it could be worked up, could be improved. Anything that comes before us can be, worked up and improved, but I think this is a basis to start that work for improvement. So I will be voting in support of this motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Long. Councillor Hotwood.
Thank you, Chairman. I listened to what Councillor Brazil's just said, and Councillor Long went along the same lines. And because I have massive sympathy for the aims of this, but I'll give you a couple of examples of why I really urge the proposer and seconder to withdraw, so that we don't waste the sentiments of what they're trying to do. One of the points, strengthen and implement fully habitats screening prior to validation of planning applications. The position is already set out in law, and we're not able to go any further than we can, and that's why I can't agree to it. But we may be able to go around it and still have the same aim at the end, but just in a different way. There's another one, the littering. Now this is one that I absolutely would have supported, but with a different wording, because I think it would need to be amended to, we don't live in a perfect world, so we can't demand things are cleaned up immediately, because they may not even realise that litter's coming out of the back of a lorry or something. But if you were to reword it and to say something like to put pressure on FCC to prevent occurrences by ensuring the hatches on the vehicles are closed, then I could have supported it. There's another one here that says that it's we cannot do. I can't find it now, but there's another one of these that we just cannot do, because it's already being done by other statutory bodies. So I'm really urging you, so we don't waste this motion, because I don't want the sentiments of it to be wasted at all. I would really like some collaboration between all the parties on this council to take this away and work it up into a meaningful, not that this isn't meaningful, but just into a document that you can actually, we have some power over, because at the moment there are things we're being asked to do that we just cannot do. So I just implore you, please don't force me to vote against it, which I'm going to have to do at the moment, because I can't vote for something that we can't change by law. So please take it away and let's bring it back as a collaboration to the next council document, to the next council meeting, because we all want to protect our but I forgot what we're protecting now. Sorry. All right, we all want to protect and enhance our biodiversity and habitats. We're desperate to see an improvement. We're desperate to keep what we have for future generations and not let it be destroyed. So please take it away. Let's all get together, sit round a table, work it out, and come back again with a real document that has some teeth in it to move us forward. Thank you.
Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just going to round up on the last bullet point, because I don't think anybody's spoken to that yet. But that is consider options for on-the-spot fines and the rest of it. We have no powers to do this without any legislation, so we can't agree to it. Now, we've been criticised by Councillors Birch and Baldry for not having approached the other side to get agreement with them. This was such a composite motion, to use a Labour Party word, that it's actually difficult to do that. And in any case, when I approached Councillor Hodgson last time with a perfectly reasonable amendment in the circumstances, because the CEE bill didn't exist, and we said that we would support the aims of the CEE bill, she wouldn't take the amendment. So that's why we haven't approached them this time. Now, Councillor Brazil was trying very subtly to change the direction of the motion by mentioning the joint local plan. If this is directed towards the joint local plan amendment revisions, why didn't he say so in the motion? I mean, it's got all the rest of everything thrown into it, so why wasn't the joint local plan mentioned? And Councillor Long talked about fixes and work in practice. Well, I don't think fixes and work in practice are things you can do with motions. Either they state it as it is and what we want to do, or they don't. Now, we will ask you for the last time, are you prepared to withdraw this motion? Because if you are, then you can bring it back, reworded. Officers, I'm sure, will help you put it together, because they're there to help you as much as they help us. It's not exclusive. They'll help the opposition too. And if you put it together as something which is legal and clean and something we can vote for, we will vote for it. But at the moment, we are unable to do that, because it would put the council in a bind that it couldn't get out of if you pass this motion. So I'm afraid that's where we leave you, Councillor Hodgson, but we are giving you an opportunity right up to the last minute.
Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you. Some interesting contributions this afternoon. I won't comment particularly on any of the sentiment, but I will say that I don't think this is so stringent. I don't think it is unclean, because it's been told to clean it up. It's not unclean. And legislation is consider asking somebody to pass a law. No, consider ways could be used to strengthen the planning system. Work through the Joint Local Plan Partnership. The Joint Local Plan is very clearly stated in here. Looking at about developing a policy, well, our Joint Local Plan is full of our policies, and that's obviously where those would sit. So I think there's, you don't have to be very sort of like clever to work out what's actually being said here. I think it's just like, people have taken opportunities to kind of stab at it so that we can actually just have something so diluted down that it won't be worth the paper it's written on, which happens time and time again in local authorities. And I'm not saying in this one, but it does happen all the time. And I think this is something that could actually make us do something about many of these elements that contribute to currently contributing to the degradation of our wildlife. These are things that we can do to look at what's going on and see how best we can improve it. Think words like strengthen. That's not asking for a change in the law. Ensure, littering. Well, we're doing that kind of, but we're not maybe doing it as much as we could do. But that's obviously like a very immediate thing. And things like on-the-spot fines, as my understanding is that we do have on-the-spot fines for dropping litter. So I see no reason why we couldn't sort of have some of these other things brought in as well. I mean, we are entitled, as far as I understand it, to make some bylaws. If I'm wrong, then the response to consider options would be we can't do it. So I think this is just a sort of like a shopping list of things that we can go through. It might be a good workshop to use to take this to, but I'm not asking for the world. I'm just asking for us to look at some of these elements that we can do and see how good we could make it happen. And if that's unacceptable to people, then so be it. But I just think this is really important. And I think if we start watering down things, then they become meaningless. I hope you will rethink that and just vote for it. Just see how it goes. I mean, we're not risking the local authority by doing something like this. We're actually just looking at things and having conversations.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. I've had no amendments or anything put at all by anybody, so we put this to the vote. Okay? So, all those in favour of the motion as seen?
That's 13 in favour, thank you, Chair.
Those against? Offer the opportunity.
16 against, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair, that's correct.
Okay. We'll move on to motion 3. Councillor Hodgson, will you simply put the motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Councillor Browser?
Second.
Thank you. Councillor Hodgson, would you like to introduce your motion, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sure we all received an email from Roger English a couple of weeks ago regarding the new ways of looking at what's happening with AONBs. And this is proposing that we should actually look at an extension of the SH South Hams AONB, looking at some of our catchment areas. We have our AONB team looking at the catchments at the moment, the estuaries, and following up through the rivers. And certainly from where I'm operating, I know that Dartington and Staverton would really welcome an extension of the AONB up through the Dart. So that's the basis of this motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brazil, do you want to hold your thunder?
I'll hold fire, thanks, Chairman.
Right. Debate, Councillor Holloway.
Thank you, Chairman. Should this read South Devon area of outstanding natural beauty?
Yeah, technically, having been chair of it in the past, it is the South Devon AONB, yes.
Sorry.
Do we need to put that as an amendment, Mr. White?
With respect, Chair, if the proposed and second are happy to accept that, I'll have to update on the screen accordingly.
Accept that, yeah, with an apology. Thank you.
That's cleared that up nicely, thank you. Comments, debate, please. Mr. Pearce.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I've got this letter from Natural England to Roger England in front of me, and this sets out very clearly that 4 new AONB areas are being considered. Now, this is the first time, I understand, since the AONBs were formed, that anything has changed. Now, I could be wrong, but I do know that they move at a glacial speed. And I also know that the most important thing in the South Devon AONB would be to include Burr Island, which by a complete anomaly was left out. But we've always hesitated to put it in because things do move at such a glacial speed that it might kind of compromise the rest of it. I'm interested to hear that the purpose of this is to include Dartington going up the Dart. I wonder why that is. No major development in the AONB, maybe? But again, moving at such a glacial speed, I'm sure those houses will be built out before anything happens. Anyway, having said that, the motion is only that South Hams District Council will consider the options of proposing. And on that basis, I can't see any harm in considering the options of proposing something. So I'm actually happy to support this motion as it stands. I don't think it's going to get us anywhere because I don't think they're going to look at us. I just don't think there's any chance of that. But I'm happy, as I say, to consider the options of proposing. So thank you, Councillor Hodgson, for the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. This is more of just an aside, to be honest with you, because the number of people that we hear speaking at Planning Committee that refer to the AONB as the ANOB really annoys me. It's the area of outstanding natural beauty, not the area of natural outstanding beauty. And it's just as a caveat, really, but I'm very happy to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. If you'll indulge me, I will just add a little because some of you will know I was chairman of the AONB for several years before I became a district councillor. And this came up time and time again. And I know to increase this, it was looked at deeply several times, to increase the size in any way, shape, form or fashion is an absolute fortune, unfortunately. So it might happen, it might not. Burr Island was left out, unfortunately. Councillor Pennell.
Yes, just supporting this. At the other end of the Avon, or nearly the other end of the Avon from Burr Island, yes, it seems unfortunate that the upper Avon is protected by the National Park and the lower Avon is protected by the AONB, and yet there's a section in between which could probably benefit from the AONB being extended as possibly one of the areas we might look at. So I would support this.
Councillor Rowe.
And I'm wondering what the benefits of this would be, plus the fact it's going to cost us money. And I thought the officers and the staff within our South Devon area of outstanding natural beauty offices had enough to do already. They're forever telling us how hard they work and how much they've got to do, and they can't give us the reports that we sometimes need. So I do wonder how they're going to cope with the extra work of finding out, consulting with the people they would need to consult with river catchment areas, which perhaps they want to bring in if the consultees wanted to bring their areas into the AONB. And in fact, most of all our main river catchment areas are already within the AONB. So whilst I'm happy to support it, but I don't think it's going to get very far, because it's going to be too expensive. It's going to cost a lot of time and money. We will need extra staff to deal with the work that it's going to entail. And at the end of the day, it won't be down to us who make the final decisions. So I'm not sure where it's going to get to, but I will support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. So they're not going to come down, 2 men for 2 days, go down the 379, go back up the train, up the Avon, add that bit in and go back to London, because basically that's what happened when the AONB was put in place. And I'm not joking, that is basically what happened. But there are bits that are left out, and I should be supporting this as well. So I think, unless anybody else has got anything to say, I will put it to the vote.
Chair, Councillor Hodgson has the right reply.
Oh, sorry, yeah, Councillor Hodgson.
I won't take any more of our time. Thank you, Chairman. I welcome everybody's comments. Thank you.
Right, Mr. White, please.
Thank you, Chair. All those members in favour, please show. That is unanimous. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, everybody.
How long did that take? The dealing with motions, just for the record.
I was within the 45 minutes, don't worry.
4 minutes to spare, Councillor Birch.
I know you were there waiting, don't worry. That's fine. Okay, so we move on to minutes of meetings, yes? I think the first one is the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which was held on the 1st of April 2021. Councillor Birch, would you like to present the minutes, please?
Yes, as there's nothing in the new constitution that requires me to go through page by page, so I will move that Council receive and note the minutes of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee held on the 1st of April 2021.
Do we require a seconder for that?
Purely for noting, Chair.
Thank you. So we move on to the Development and Management Committee held on the 28th of April. Councillor Brazil, please.
Thank you, Chairman. And in light of those comments, I'll do the same. Happy to take any questions on any of the issues. Otherwise, I will move those, well, not move those minutes, but move those minutes for noting.
Thank you, Councillor Brazil. And again, please, for the meeting of the 20th.
Yeah.
Chairman, can I raise an issue with regard to those minutes?
You may, Councillor Martin, yes.
Sorry, Councillor Pringle in attendance, whereas actually Councillor Pringle was unable to be there, so I was substitute for Councillor Pringle. And if you look further through, my vote on the application is recorded down through. So I did raise this. Mr. White is aware of this. So
thank you, Councillor Martin. All noted. And we move on to the executive. Councillor Pearce, would you like to present the minutes of the 27th of May, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I present the minutes of the 27th of May and ask that they be noted by Council.
Thank you. Would you like to do the 3rd of June as well, please?
I can do that for you, Chairman, yes. So on page 10 of those minutes, there is a council recommendation which has been dealt with earlier on the agenda because it was about the draft corporate strategy. And then further on at the bottom of page 13, there is a recommendation dealing with the public Space Protection Order 2021, and I'm going to ask Councillor Hawkins if he will speak to this one because the result was quite complicated and we altered the amendment.
Councillor Pearce, I think you're ahead of yourself. Am
I?
Yes, you are at the moment.
Oh, I'm sorry. You wanted me to do... Oh, golly.
3rd of June.
You want me to do the 3rd of June?
Yeah, just note them.
Yes, all right. Well, I present the minutes of the executive meeting held on the 3rd of June and ask that they be noted by Council.
Thank you. I'll move on now to Overview and Scrutiny. Councillor Birch. Thank you. Councillor Brazil, would you like to present the Salcombe Harbour Board minutes held on the 28th of June, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Happy to present the Harbour Board minutes for the 28th of June to the Council for noting.
Thank you very much. And finally, going back to the executive, and this is the one with the recommendation, Councillor Pearce, it's the 8th of July, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes. Well, I've dealt with the one on page 10 because we've already dealt with it in the agenda, and I'm going to pass over to Councillor Hawkins for the recommendation on page 13.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I'm on. Thank you, Leader. Members, the recommendations before Council were debated at some length by the Executive on the 8th of July. As such, I would like wholeheartedly to ask the Council to approve the alcohol PSPOs for the Dartmouth, Ivybridge, Kingsbridge, Salcombe and Totnes areas. Concerns were raised by the Executive in relation to the recommendations to remove PCSOs for Modbury, South Brent and Walwell. Therefore, I am proposing that the Council approves the consulting again in these areas, and that in consultation with this, the Council requests officers to arrange meetings with Devon and Cornwall Police to discuss their evidence and rationale for not supporting the PCSPOs in these areas. To be clear, this is a statutory requirement that the Council has to be satisfied on reasonable grounds that 1. The activity or behaviour concerned carried out or likely to be carried out in a public space area has had or is likely to have a detrimental effect on the quality of life of those in the locality, or is likely to be persistent or continuing in nature, is or is likely to be unreasonable and justifies the restrictions imposed. While the Council would normally look to the police to provide the evidence to meet these requirements, the police are just one source, and the views of the community are equally as important. So, as long as they are justified and evidence are capable of being the basis for making of a PSPO. If the Council were, however, to make a PSPO that were not supported by the police, there would be a greater risk of it being challenged and perhaps, if not being enforced, than a PSPO that was supported. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Can I have a seconder for what Councillor Hawkins has just said? There seems to have been numerous. Councillor Baston. I've got Councillor Long first. I thought just now you wanted to come to me just now.
Not on this point, on a question.
Okay, right.
Thank you. Councillor Hawkins, have the maps been updated? I'm sorry that I have to ask the question, but just they were all improved?
As I don't have Ian Luscombe with me here this afternoon, or Louisa Daly, who's left the Council, I'm afraid I'll have to come back to you on that. I apologise.
Will it affect the effectiveness of the order?
No, because we're talking about, and if I'm looking correctly, I'm looking at Councillor, sorry, I can't see who's talking.
It's Victor Abbott.
Can I suggest we have a conversation after this meeting and we'll come back to you?
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Pano, you indicated?
Yeah, I just wanted to welcome the provision to look again at Modbury, South Brent and Morwell. I challenged the recommendation originally to withdraw it from South Brent. One comment was, well, there hasn't been much recently. Well, there has in the past, and maybe the fact that the alcohol order was brought in and is displayed one in the centre of the village, although I'm not sure that one still applies. And there's a notice up, is actually helped to deter bad behaviour. So I think we do need to look at this again, and as you say, consult with the community.
Thank you. I need Councillor Pearce again from sorry.
Sorry, can I come back on this one because of the remarks that have been made, and ask that when the maps have been revised, that they are circulated to the members in those particular areas so that they know what the final revision looks like, please. If that could be an action arising out of this. And then I don't know whether we need to vote on this or whether just the general consensus is that everybody is in agreement with it. Fine, okay.
That was seconded by Councillor Bast, wasn't it? Yeah, okay. Can we have a show of hands in favour? Councillor Long, you asked me to come back just now. It may not be on this. You can come back, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a question on the Executive Forward Plan. I did raise at that meeting the fact that the grounds maintenance review had dropped off the Forward Plan, and I had thought that this had been agreed or asked for by Councillor Baldry and Councillor Pearce to come forward again on the Executive Forward Plan, and it doesn't appear that there's any commentary in here about that.
Pierce?
I ask that it be added to the forward plan, which is updated at regular intervals. So I'm sure it will appear on the next edition of the forward plan, Councillor Long.
Thank you, Chairman.
Satisfied with that? Councillor Baldry?
Thanks to Councillor Long for bringing that up, and just say I am very keen that it comes forward at the earliest possible opportunity as an agenda item. I would hope for September, but officers may try to persuade me it has to wait till October. But I am very keen that we get this paper done.
Thank you. Well, members, I think that is at the end of business. There are those that nod at me occasionally when we get towards the 2-hour session, but we haven't got that far, so they'll be happy. So thank you for your attendance, thank you for the debate, and enjoy August, is all I can say, because